In 1971, a teenage girl named Eloise Harper was buried after a drowning accident, or so the town believed. Her grave was modest, her story quiet. But in 1999, construction workers digging behind a shuttered school found a perfectly preserved body in a sealed room. DNA confirmed it was Eloise, but her casket was still in the cemetery. The body in the wall had scratches on the inside of the door. Someone had buried her alive twice. Now, as the case is reopened, Eloise begins to appear in the lives of those digging into her past. And she's not resting anymore. It was supposed to be a routine demolition job. The old Fairhaven Elementary School, abandoned since the late 70s, was being torn down to make room for a strip mall just outside Savannah, Georgia. The building had sat rotting in the sun for decades, boarded up and swallowed by moss, its red bricks chipped and faded like the memory of a place no one really wanted to remember. On August 12, 1999, at exactly 10:17 a.m., a backhoe punched through a wall behind the main building and revealed something that shouldn't have been there, a hidden room with no doors, no windows, and no records in the original blueprints. It had been sealed behind layers of concrete and insulation, like someone had tried to make sure no one would ever find it. Inside was a metal table bolted to the ground, and a body lying on it. Not a skeleton. A body. Pale, intact, perfectly preserved, as if time had simply forgotten to pass. The workers stopped everything. Police were called. Crime scene tape went up. Forensics arrived within the hour, expecting a Jane Doe and a cold case. But then the coroner pulled DNA and ran the dental records. The results came back the next day. The girl on the table was Eloise Harper, born 1957, died 1971, buried in St. Agnes Cemetery. Already buried. Sheriff Malcolm Dupre was the first to utter it aloud at the press conference. "We have a body in the school and a body in the grave. And science says they're both Eloise Harper." The town of Eden's Hollow, population 3,241, lit up like dry brush. Old rumors resurfaced like bloated corpses, stories about disappearances in the 70s, satanic rituals, whispers of those kids who went missing in the marsh. People who'd been children during that time suddenly remembered locked doors, strange lights in the school at night, the stench of bleach, and that sound behind the auditorium wall. A wet, scraping sound. Eloise Harper had been a quiet girl from the poor side of town. Her mother, Lorraine, worked nights at a diner. Her father was long gone. In July of 1971, at age 14, Eloise was reported missing. 3 days later, her body was found face down in the Savannah River, her skin blue and swollen. A sheriff's deputy ruled it a drowning. No signs of struggle. No autopsy. She was buried by the weekend in a pine box her mother couldn't afford. The town moved on. Or at least pretended to. But in 1999, that story cracked wide open. Because this Eloise, the one in the wall, had never drowned. The autopsy on the second body revealed something chilling. Her lungs were not filled with water. Instead, her fingers were broken and clawed, her nails torn, her mouth frozen open in a scream. Beneath the skin of her arms, splinters from the wooden underside of the table. She had fought. She had screamed. And she had died slowly in the dark. Inside that sealed room, investigators also found something else, claw marks on the concrete. Dozens of them. Deep. Carved by human hands. And then there was the camera. In the corner of the room, embedded in the wall just above the body, was an old film camera, 16mm, dusty but intact. Its film reel had long since stopped, but after careful handling and development, they managed to recover 32 minutes of grainy black and white footage. It began with static. Then, a light bulb swinging overhead. A hand gloved, adjusting the lens. A girl's voice crying. Then silence. The final frame, Eloise, tied to the table, eyes wide, looking directly into the camera as if she saw something behind it. And then darkness. The public wasn't told about the tape, but people who worked the case leaked fragments. One technician quit the day he watched it. Another began attending church for the first time in 20 years. And one detective, Jamie Ray Hollis, took a leave of absence and never came back. "I think we saw something we shouldn't have," she would later tell a reporter, and I think Eloise was never the only one in that room. As news spread, people visited the cemetery. Some brought flowers. Others brought shovels. 3 days later, authorities exhumed the original coffin. Inside was a second body, decomposed, yes, but still wearing the same pendant Eloise's mother had buried her with. It was her. Without question. 2 identical girls. Same fingerprints. Same DNA. Same dental records. But one had died of drowning. And the other had died after screaming for days. The FBI got involved. So did the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. But every theory hit a wall. Clone? Impossible. Twin sister? Never recorded. Faked first death? That would mean the corpse in the coffin was someone else, but it wasn't. Even stranger, Eloise's mother, now in a care home, began saying bizarre things. She told me her little girl had come home, one nurse reported. Said she stood at the foot of her bed and smiled. Another said Lorraine sang lullabies at night, songs she claimed Eloise had taught her just yesterday. Lorraine died in her sleep 2 weeks later. Her last words? You buried her wrong. On the 1-month anniversary of the discovery, Sheriff Dupre received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo dated October 1971 showing a group of 5 people in a dimly lit room. The photo had been torn at the edges, but you could make out robes, candles, and a symbol on the wall. The symbol was later identified as a variation of the Norse rune Algiz associated with protection and death. Below the photo in shaky handwriting. Check the floorboards beneath the stage. The very next morning, demolition at the old school was halted. And when they opened the floor under the auditorium, they found 4 more bodies. All children. All dated between 1969 and 1972. All of them, like Eloise, were reported drowned. The bodies were wrapped in plastic sheeting, as if whoever buried them didn't want the earth to touch them. Each child had been carefully placed in a shallow depression beneath the wooden stage of the Fairhaven Elementary Auditorium. Their fingers were curled inward, faces tilted upward. A small handheld crucifix was found in each child's mouth, the kind given out during Catholic communion. But none of the children had gone to the Catholic school across town. The cause of death for all 4? Asphyxiation. No signs of trauma. No ligature marks. No water in the lungs. Just stillness. The coroner, Dr. Elena Croft, gave her statement to investigators in a whisper. It was like they were made to breathe nothing. Not air. Not water. Just silence. Like the breath had been stolen. She later added unofficially that 2 of the corpses still had tears on their cheeks. And that all 4 were missing their tongues. Local papers tried to suppress the story, but the town was already spiraling. Eden's Hollow had always been a quiet place, the kind of town where you knew everyone's name and skeletons stayed politely tucked in closets. But the Harper girls' case cracked the door. And the children beneath the stage? That kicked it wide open. Detective Jamie Ray Hollis came back from her leave, unannounced, after reading the preliminary autopsy reports. She didn't tell anyone she'd been visiting Eloise's grave every night since the exhumation. Nor did she mention the dreams. I'm back, Jamie told Sheriff Dupre quietly as she walked into the station. You sure you want to be? He replied, eyes dark with worry. She nodded once. He handed her the photo again, the one with the robed figures and the rune symbol. She took it and stared hard at the background. Dusty bricks. A chalk-drawn circle. A child's desk in the corner. And someone, a man, face obscured by a hood holding what looked like a candle or a scalpel. Jamie flipped it over. No other writing. Just a fingerprint smudge. But she knew what she was looking for now. She needed to find out who built the room behind the wall. Records showed that the school had undergone renovations in 1969 after a fire damaged the east wing. The contractor listed? Dorian and Sons Construction. A company that had only ever taken one job. This one. The business license had been revoked in 1972 after the owner vanished. No death certificate. No known family. His name was Dorian Feist. A deeper dig into county archives revealed something stranger, a newspaper clipping from 1955. A young Dorian Feist had been a janitor at the Eden's Hollow Hospital before it burned down. The article claimed he was the only survivor found unharmed inside the building. He had been discovered kneeling in the burned nursery ward, surrounded by ash and laughing. Jamie tracked down the one person who remembered him, a woman named Clara Reddick, now 89, once the school's head secretary. When asked about Dorian, she immediately stiffened. He didn't speak, just stared. He'd show up early and leave late. Said the rooms weren't done whispering yet. We thought he was just a drunk. Clara handed Jamie an old yearbook photo. It showed a man at the edge of the faculty staff, tall, gaunt, unsmiling. Jamie nearly dropped the photo when she saw what was pinned to his lapel. The same symbol from the photo, Algiz, the death rune. By the end of October 1999, public panic was setting in. Parents pulled kids from school. Tourists stopped visiting the cemetery. Church attendance tripled. And through it all, one name kept surfacing in whispers. Eloise. Sightings began small. Someone claimed to see her walking barefoot along the riverbank. Others said she appeared in the mirror of a diner bathroom, mouthing something silently behind the steam. Then came the audio. A late-night radio station received a cassette tape in the mail with no return address. The host, curious, played it on air. It was 30 seconds of static. Then a voice. "He's not done with me," it said. "He never was. They buried me wrong." Then whispering. Then screaming. And finally a sound like a shovel hitting wood. The station's call board lit up. For callers claimed they recognized the voice. It was Eloise Harper. Jamie Ray couldn't sleep. She sat at her kitchen table playing the cassette over and over again. She hadn't told anyone she'd gotten the same tape 2 days earlier, slid under her windshield wiper in a plain envelope. But hers had something else on the back, a single sentence in tiny handwriting. "She's still down there." Jamie didn't know what that meant, until she remembered the crawl space under the school. Back in 1971, a janitor had once been caught drunk, screaming, and trying to break into the maintenance hatch beneath the auditorium. He'd been fired and institutionalized. Records of his admittance were sealed. But Jamie found the man. His name was Franklin Copes. Now 83, blind in one eye and living in a care home 2 counties over. He rarely spoke. But when Jamie showed him the Harper photo, the one from the wall, his lips moved. He whispered, "I told them not to go down there." Jamie asked who. He just smiled. The ones who buried her twice. The crawlspace beneath Fairhaven Elementary was never part of the official building plans. Even when the school was operational, janitors refused to go near it. Kids dared each other to knock on the rusted hatch by the boiler room, but none ever opened it. After the fire in '69, it was welded shut and forgotten until now. Armed with a crowbar and flashlight, Detective Jamie Ray Hollis returned to the ruins late at night, long after the demo crews had been ordered off the property. The moon was a thin smear above her, and the wind carried something strange, not quite a voice, but something close. Like breathing where there shouldn't be breath. She found the hatch half buried in blackened debris. The metal was cold, unnaturally cold, and the seams looked newer than they should have. Someone had reinforced this, maybe recently. Maybe after the second body had been found. It took 20 minutes to get it open. And then the smell hit her. The stench was ancient, rot, damp stone, rusted iron, and something fouler underneath. It clawed up her throat, sour and thick. She steadied her breath, pointed her flashlight, and descended the narrow iron rungs into the blackness below. The beam of light revealed walls of unfinished brick, sweating with condensation, and spiderwebs so thick they looked like curtains. The air was wrong. Too still. Then the light caught something ahead would. An old table. Shackles on its legs. Deep grooves carved into its surface. And something else, a mirror propped against the far wall. Shattered down the middle. Etched above the mirror in faint chalk was the same symbol as before, the Algiz rune. But this time it was inverted. Jamie's breath caught. Inverting that rune, she remembered, changed its meaning. From protection to sacrifice. She stepped closer. The mirror was coated in grime, but the shattered glass still reflected something. Not her. Not the room behind her. But a girl, in a white dress, mouth open in an endless scream, eyes staring out like she'd been waiting. Jamie stumbled back and dropped the flashlight. When she picked it up, the reflection was gone. She didn't speak of the mirror in her report. Instead, she listed ritual table, blood traces, restraints, child-sized bones. Because yes, behind the mirror was a cavity in the brick. And inside that, more bones. Tiny. Then unnaturally. The town demanded answers, but the truth was too tangled to explain. Sheriff Dupre was quietly removed from the case, replaced by state authorities. Jamie stayed, but only because no one else knew the land like she did or cared enough to face what it was hiding. She wasn't alone, though. A new player had entered the story. Leah Winters, a 27-year-old freelance journalist and host of a rising paranormal podcast, Dead Air, had arrived in Eden's Hollow. Her focus, cold cases, ghost lore, and places that didn't want to be remembered. She'd heard about the Harper girl before the story broke nationally. But once she saw the tapes and the body count, she booked a one-way ticket. What she didn't expect was to receive a letter the moment she checked into the motel. No name, no stamp, just a slip of paper on her pillow. 4 words. Listen at the grave. That night, Leah brought a field mic to the cemetery. She placed it near Eloise's gravestone, the original one, still standing despite the controversy, and recorded for 3 hours. It wasn't until she got back to the motel and filtered the background hiss that she heard it. A girl's voice. 3 words. Not her body. Leah's next episode went viral. She shared the whisper, the photo of the broken mirror, and played the audio clip at the end of the podcast. In 48 hours, her inbox was flooded with emails. One, from a woman in Tennessee, claimed she'd heard the same whisper in her daughter's bedroom mirror. Another, from a former priest in Savannah, said he once tried to cleanse the school in 1972 and was told to leave by someone with no face. But the message that caught her attention was from a man named Daniel Feist. Subject line, "My father buried things." Jamie and Leah met at the remains of the school the next morning. The sun barely crested the pines and the air had a sour stillness again. Daniel Feist was already there. Thin, nervous, 38 years old. He worked maintenance at a hospital in Atlanta. Never married. "I didn't know anything," he said, voice tight. "Not until I saw your podcast. But I remember something. My dad had this room in our basement. Said it was for a quiet time." Jamie asked what was in the room. He stared at the tree line behind her. A desk, some old books, and a mirror. That night, Daniel sent Jamie a scan of one of those books. It was handbound. No title. Pages brittle. But inside was a diagram, the Algi's rune, inverted, drawn in red ink, surrounded by numbers and coordinates. Beneath it, scrawled in Dorian Feist's handwriting. "She has to be seen to stay. But once they stop looking, she comes back." The journal was a map, but not in the traditional sense. Each page was filled with erratic handwriting and fragments of thought, layered over arcane symbols, faded Polaroids, and diagrams of the Fairhaven school layout. Jamie Ray Hollis stared at the scans on her desk like they were a puzzle she couldn't quite fit together. But one phrase kept repeating, sometimes scratched into the corners, other times written in bold across entire pages. "Don't let her go unseen." Daniel Feist said he never really knew his father. Dorian had died in 1985 from unknown causes, his body found alone in the woods near the Savannah River. No trauma, no wounds, just wide eyes and soil stuffed in his mouth. "They said it was a seizure," Daniel muttered, "but my uncle told me he was smiling when they found him. Like he'd seen something." He never forgot that. And now he was starting to believe his father had been trying to trap it. Jamie ran Dorian Feist's name through more databases. She found no birth certificate, no social security number, just a marriage license from 1965 and a handful of property records. One deed stood out, a cabin in the woods just outside Eden's Hollow near the edge of Okefenokee Swamp, listed as abandoned since 1973. Daniel had never heard of it, but Leah, standing over Jamie's shoulder, whispered, "We need to go there." They arrived 2 days later. The cabin sagged between twisted pines, hidden behind layers of brush and rot. It looked like it had grown there rather than been built, with boards warped like skin and windows clouded over from decades of neglect. There were bones scattered in the yard. Small ones. Animal, probably. Maybe. The front door wasn't locked. It simply groaned open like it had been waiting. Inside, dust coated everything. Old books. A rusted stove. A mattress stained black in the center. But in the back room, a square carved into the floor. A trapdoor. Fresh scratch marks around the edge. Leah lowered herself into the crawl space first. Her flashlight flickered but held. Jamie followed, then Daniel. The air was cold, but not natural, too cold. The hairs on their arms lifted. The space was small. Just dirt walls. And in the center? A wooden chair, facing a tall, freestanding mirror. It looked exactly like the one behind the school wall. Same cracks in the glass. Same pale smudge in the top corner. And in the dirt around the chair, scratched with a nail or bone. "You have to keep watching." Jamie stepped forward, peering into the mirror. Her own reflection stared back, tired, haunted, worn. But just behind her reflection, something moved. Leah gasped. "Did you see?" The flashlight died. Darkness swallowed the space like water. And in that moment, Jamie heard it. Not a voice, a presence. Breathing against her ear. Then a whisper, so close it felt wet. "Turn around." She did. No one was there. They scrambled out fast. Leah dropped her mic pack. Daniel vomited in the grass. Jamie didn't speak for the rest of the day. Later, Leah played back the audio. Most of it was static and rustling, but at exactly 14:06, a voice hissed through the speakers. "I remember your face." But it wasn't Eloise. It was a man's voice. And it said Jamie's name. That night, Jamie stayed up reading every page of Dorian's journal. Some of it was gibberish. Other parts were vivid and exact, rituals involving salt, iron, symbols carved under floorboards, mirrors placed at cardinal points. But it was this line, on the last page, that chilled her deepest. "The girl is not a ghost. She is what you make when you look away from suffering and call it solved. She's what's left." Jamie realized something. This wasn't just about Eloise. It was about everyone they never listened to. On November 2nd, a third body was discovered in Eden's Hollow. A 9-year-old boy, missing since 1970. Found buried beneath the library steps, skeletal hands tied with rosary beads. Cause of death, asphyxiation. In his mouth, a sliver of glass. Police didn't explain how his corpse ended up preserved, or how his parents received an anonymous postcard a week earlier that simply read, "You forgot him." Jamie drove to Lorraine Harper's old house the next day. The place had been vacant since her death, but neighbors swore someone had been in there. "Lights come on at night," one said. "Singing. Real soft." Jamie entered through the back. Dust everywhere. Smell of mold. The living room still had family photos on the wall, including Eloise, age 8, with a red ribbon in her hair. Jamie stood staring until she noticed something strange. Every single mirror in the house had been turned to face the wall. In Eloise's old bedroom, Jamie found a tape recorder. She pressed play. White noise. Then humming. A girl's voice. "London Bridge is falling down." And then, "You buried me twice. Now you have to watch what comes out." Jamie Ray Hollis didn't sleep that night. The voice on the recorder wasn't a dream or a hallucination. It was real. And it sounded like Eloise, but older. Calmer. Like something inside her had waited long enough and finally knew how to speak. The next morning, Jamie met Leah at the library to compare notes. Leah had been reviewing baptismal and school records, searching for anything connecting the victims, not just Eloise, but the 4 children under the auditorium and the boy beneath the library. She found it. They were all enrolled in the same Sunday school. At St. Elmo's Chapel, a tiny, now shuttered building on the edge of the swamp. Closed in 1973 after the priest vanished. They drove there in silence. The chapel was more ruined than structure now. Ivy strangled the steeple and most of the windows were broken. The front door was barely hanging by one hinge. But inside, the pews were still upright. A dusty Bible still sat on the pulpit, open to Exodus 22, verse 18. "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." And in the back, hidden beneath a wooden plank, was a trapdoor. Jamie stared at it for a long time. "Why is there always a room under everything?" Leah whispered. Jamie didn't answer. They pried the door open and descended the stairs. The space below wasn't wide, but it was deep. The walls were covered in yellowed prayer cards pinned up in circular patterns. In the center was a small altar, and on it a mirror, smaller this time, intact, and in front of it a single black and white photo. Cracked, faded, it showed 6 children sitting in a semicircle on the chapel steps. One of them was Eloise Harper. Another was the boy they'd found under the library. Behind them, standing in the doorway, was a man in priest's robes. Face blurred, hand on Eloise's shoulder. Jamie took the photo, but when she turned to leave, Leah stayed frozen. She was staring into the mirror. "Don't you hear it?" she whispered. Jamie hesitated. "Hear what?" Leah didn't blink. "She's behind me." Jamie yanked her away. Leah screamed and dropped her recorder. It hit the dirt floor, still running. Jamie didn't notice until hours later when she replayed the audio. After Leah's scream, silence. Then a child's voice. "She's not behind you. She's inside her." Back at the station, Jamie got a call from an anonymous tip line. The voice was a man's. Shaky. Older. "I worked the school. Back then. 71. Night crew," he said. "They told us not to ask questions when the walls went up." Jamie asked who they were. The man didn't answer right away. Then there were meetings. Late nights. In the basement. After the kids left. They'd bring mirrors. Candles. The Feist man ran it, but there were others. Town people. Names? Jamie asked. Silence. Then the man hung up. Leah began acting strange. She stopped eating, barely slept, would stare at mirrors in silence for minutes at a time. Jamie caught her whispering to herself or to someone. When confronted, Leah snapped, "She's not finished yet. You still don't see her." Jamie pushed her to explain. Leah pulled out a notebook filled with scribbles and drawings, circles, symbols, timestamps. She pointed to one. 3:14 a.m. "What's this?" Jamie asked. "She always comes at 3:14, Leah said. "That's when the first Eloise died. The one you didn't find." Jamie froze. There were more than 2? They dug deeper into the town's missing persons records, unofficially. Most of the kids who vanished between 1968 and 1973 were listed as runaways, custody disputes, or never reported at all. But Jamie found 4 more names. Children under 10. All from low-income homes. All attended St. Elmo's Sunday School. all gone without a trace, and all had parents who either died mysteriously or stopped speaking entirely. One father, who had lived until recently in a care home, left behind a cryptic journal. Jamie tracked it down. Inside was one repeating phrase. She stepped out of the glass and took their names. Jamie returned to the Harper house that night. She stood alone in Eloise's old bedroom and faced the mirror still hanging above the desk, the only one in the house not turned to the wall. She stared and waited. At exactly 3:14 a.m., her phone buzzed. One new voicemail. She played it. Static, then scraping, then Eloise's voice. Not frightened, not screaming, calm. "You can't bury something if you never let it rest." Then a whisper. "Look behind the headstone." The next morning, Jamie returned to St. Agnes Cemetery. She found Eloise Harper's grave, the same original stone. She walked behind it slowly, scanning the overgrown grass and uneven earth. Then her foot hit something hard. She dropped to her knees and cleared away the dirt. A second stone. Small, flat, hidden. No name, just a carved image of a girl's face, smiling. And beneath it, 1971 to 1971. Jamie froze, because Eloise was born in 1957. But this stone said the girl only lived for 1 year. The carving on the hidden stone was shallow, faded, like someone had etched it in haste or secrecy. Just a round-faced girl, smiling. No last name, no epitaph, no religious symbols. But the date was unmistakable. 1971 to 1971. Jamie Ray Hollis stared at it, the soil still under her nails from clearing the grass. Her breath caught in her throat. "Not possible," she whispered. She pulled out her phone and reopened the Harper family records. Eloise was born in 1957, died in 1971. That part matched. But there was nothing about another Harper child that same year. Unless the Eloise everyone knew wasn't the first. She took the stone's GPS coordinates and ran them through the town's old cemetery records. The grave didn't exist on any official map. In fact, the records for that exact plot had been marked as vacant since 1969. The land had never been purchased. The stone was unregistered. Someone had buried her in secret. Someone didn't want her remembered. Jamie texted Leah, "We were wrong. There was a first Eloise." But Leah didn't reply. When Jamie reached Leah's motel, the room was empty. Door wide open. Lights still on. Recorder running on the desk. On the bed, her notebook. Pages torn. Scribbles everywhere. But one phrase repeated over and over. "The mirror remembers." And in the bathroom, on the mirror, drawn in condensation from the inside. 3:14. Jamie played back the recorder. The first 8 minutes were nothing but ambient room noise. Then the rustling of sheets. Leah's voice, murmuring, "Who are you?" Then silence. Then a knock. 1, 2, 3. And a voice. A girl's voice. Gentle. "You're not looking at me." Then a wet scraping sound. A gasp. The sound of a mirror cracking. And then static. Jamie called Daniel Feist. She hadn't heard from him in days. When he picked up, his voice was hoarse. "I saw her." Jamie froze. "What?" "In the mirror. At work. In the stairwell. I wasn't even looking for her. She was there." He paused. "And I think I know who the first Eloise was." Daniel said his father, Dorian Feist, once mentioned the failed vessel. A child born to carry the breach. Jamie pressed for details, but all he would say was, "My dad said the breach started when the first one died too soon, before the ritual was complete, before they could seal it in her reflection." Jamie whispered, "So they tried again." Daniel finished for her and buried the second one twice. Back at the police archives, Jamie dug into adoption records. One, sealed in 1958, was labeled H and tied to Lorraine Harper. The file said Lorraine had adopted a girl in secret, just months after giving birth to a stillborn child. No name listed, just a note. H eyes gray, doesn't respond to her name, sensitive to mirrors. Jamie's blood ran cold. She flipped to the next page. A hand-scrawled note from a physician. Recommend no reflective surfaces in bedroom. Episodes triggered by self-gaze. The second Eloise, the one buried publicly, had never been the Harper's biological daughter. She was the replacement. Jamie returned to the hidden grave. This time, she brought a shovel. The dirt was loose, not fresh, but disturbed recently. She dug for nearly an hour, heart racing. Finally, the edge of a wooden box appeared. Small, handmade, nailed shut. She opened it. No body, just a mirror, old, handheld, with a silver frame etched in the same Algi's rune. But it was flipped, sacrificial, and etched into the glass so faint she almost missed it. I am what you left behind. The wind shifted. Jamie looked up and saw someone standing at the tree-line. Small frame, white dress, barefoot. A girl, Eloise, but smiling. Then she turned and walked backward into the woods, never breaking eye contact. Jamie didn't follow. That night, Leah's voice finally reappeared. Not in person. On the podcast. A new episode uploaded at 3:14 a.m. even though Leah had been missing for over 36 hours. Jamie played it. The usual intro music. Then silence. Then they made her from pain. They called it mercy. But pain remembers. And now it wants all of us to watch. Then a new voice. Eloise, if you don't look, I'll come through. If you forget me, I'll remember you. Jamie shut her laptop. On the dark screen, her reflection stared back. And behind her, just for a second, a smile. The town of Eden's Hollow was unraveling. In the weeks since the discovery of the hidden grave, more reports poured in. People claiming to see a barefoot girl in mirrors, car windows, even phone screens. She never spoke, just smiled. Sometimes her eyes wept blood. Sometimes she stood behind them for minutes before vanishing. One man, a pastor from across the county, gouged out his eyes after claiming she smiled inside my pupils. Another woman fled her house when every mirror turned toward her without warning. The sheriff's department stopped responding to mirror-related calls. There were just too many. Jamie Ray Hollis avoided her reflection altogether now. She covered her bathroom mirror, turned off her phone camera, avoided windows at night. But there was no denying it, Eloise was growing stronger. It wasn't a haunting. It wasn't a possession. It was worse. She was becoming remembered. And remembering gave her power. Jamie finally heard back from a contact in Savannah, an archivist who had been helping her trace Dorian Feist's original occult materials. He'd found something in an out-of-print religious journal from 1954. An essay titled The Practice of Echo Vessels in Rural Sectarian Groups. Inside was a chilling passage. When grief becomes unbearable and memory becomes denial, it is possible, through ritual mirror work and sacrifice, to create a reflected child, a being shaped from grief itself. A memory made flesh. Not a ghost, a vessel. But vessels rot. Vessels remember pain. Jamie reread that line until her vision blurred. Meanwhile, Leah Winters, still missing, posted again. Not audio, a video. Only 15 seconds. Posted at 3:14 a.m. Leah sat in the corner of her room, face half-lit, smiling slightly. In front of her, a mirror, cracked, and in it, not her reflection, but Eloise, standing behind her, eyes completely black. Leah whispered, "I'm sorry I stopped watching." The screen went black. The title of the video? Part of her now. That's when the deaths began. 2 teenagers found dead in their bedroom. No wounds, no signs of struggle. Only thing out of place? Both had fallen asleep with their vanity mirror uncovered. One of them had written something on the wall in lipstick before dying. She saw me. Jamie returned to the school ruins, now surrounded by chain-link fencing and caution tape. She pushed past the perimeter in the middle of the night. She needed to see the crawlspace one last time. It had changed. The mirror in the corner was now cracked all the way through, from top to bottom, as if pressure had built inside it, or behind it. Etched into the glass now, as if carved from the other side, was a new sentence. "There's no Eloise. There's only what you buried." Jamie backed away. Then she heard a voice behind her. Leah, disheveled, pale, eyes sunken, but smiling. "You can't stop it," Leah said gently. "Not anymore. It's awake. It remembers everything. Every child, every scream, every time we called it accident, every time we buried it and walked away." Jamie whispered, "What is it?" Leah looked at the mirror, then back at her. "It's what we created, every time we chose silence." They sat in the wreckage of the old school until dawn. Leah said she didn't remember where she'd been for the last 3 days. Just that she kept seeing rooms she'd never entered. Mirrors that bled. and that she was dreaming in other people's voices. Then she gave Jamie something. A photograph. Burned around the edges. Taken in 1971. It showed Lorraine Harper, Eloise's adoptive mother, standing with Dorian Feist and two girls, both with red ribbons, both with the same face. Jamie stared at the photo. There were three. Leah shook her head. No, just one. We've just been burying her over and over. But she never stays buried. Later that night, Jamie reviewed the school's blueprints again. There was one room no one had accessed. Not the crawl space. Not the altar. The boiler chamber. Built during the 1950s. Sealed in 1973. Labeled unsafe. But still there. And directly beneath the old choir room where they'd heard the original tapes of Eloise's crying. Jamie and Leah broke in at midnight. They found the door chained shut, but the chains were loose, like someone wanted them to come in. Inside, the heat was suffocating. The room smelled of iron and ash. In the center was an industrial furnace. Still warm. And on the floor before it, dozens of mirrors, all broken, all arranged in a spiral leading to the furnace door. On the wall behind them, written in soot. Reflections burn, but memories don't. Jamie opened the furnace. Inside, ashes. But mixed in with the char were baby teeth. Dozens. Leah whispered, this is where they tried to end her. This is where the first one was brought. Jamie dropped the flashlight. And the shadows shifted. They weren't alone. Behind them, the sound of footsteps. Bare feet. Slow. Wet. A soft voice. I remember the fire. I remember the silence. And now I want them to see what they did. They turned, but the room was empty. Just the mirrors. All of them now showing one thing. Eloise. Staring back. From every angle. Smiling. They ran from the boiler room, Jamie and Leah. But no matter where they looked, broken windows, a dark puddle, even Leah's phone screen, Eloise was there. Not following. Not chasing. Just watching. Her eyes were wider now, hollow as pits. Her mouth hung open slightly like she was caught mid-scream. Or mid-breath. She was no longer just in mirrors. She was in reflections. The more people remembered her, the more real she became. That night, Eden's Hollow turned into a town of covered glass. Sheets thrown over vanities. Duct tape over phone cameras. Entire stores blacked out their security screens. But it was too late, because people were still seeing her even with their eyes closed. One woman claimed she looked into a spoon and Eloise was smiling back from her mouth. A child said Eloise had climbed out of her reflection during bath time. And a man was found dead in his car, eyes missing, every mirror in the vehicle shattered from the inside. Jamie and Leah regrouped at the old Harper house. Jamie had brought the cracked handheld mirror from the grave, the one in the hidden box. She set it on the table between them. It's her, Leah whispered. That's where she's anchored. Jamie nodded. But how do you kill something made from pain? They sat in silence. Until Leah spoke. You don't kill her. You unmake her. Leah explained a theory. One she'd pieced together from Dorian Feist's journal and the records Jamie uncovered. Eloise wasn't a single girl. She was a reflection of many, a vessel built out of children lost, unheard, denied. She became a container of collective forgetting. A mirror for society's quiet tragedies. The ritual they tried to perform back in the 1970s, it was never to protect Eloise. It was to trap what they created. And it failed. Because people stopped watching. So what now? Jamie asked. Leah pointed at the handheld mirror. We have to put her back. They returned to the school ruins the next night, just before 3:14 a.m. Jamie carried the mirror. Leah carried Dorian's final page, a ritual designed to rebind the vessel through gaze and flame. They descended into the crawl space where it had all started. The air was thick. Still, the walls sweated. The mirror in the corner had cracked even further, but still reflected a dozen versions of Eloise, each slightly different. Some weeping. Some smiling. One whispering. Leah began to chant the words. Memory, unmade, be still. Reflection, return to vessel. Pain, be seen and sleep. Jamie held the mirror in both hands, pointed it toward the cracked glass embedded in the wall. All at once, the crawl space darkened. Not like lights going out, more like color bleeding away from the air itself. And Eloise's voice filled the space, deeper now. You let them forget me. Then, a burst of air like the room exhaled. Leah screamed. The mirror in Jamie's hands grew hot, burning hot. Glass began to bleed. Thick, black-red fluid leaked from the cracks. From every reflection, Eloise began to scream. A chorus of pain. Not rage. Grief. The temperature plummeted. Jamie shouted over the noise. What do we do? Leah, break it. Jamie raised the mirror and smashed it into the floor. Glass exploded. The room shook. And just before darkness swallowed them whole, they saw her. A small girl, standing barefoot, not smiling, not weeping, just watching. Then gone. Jamie woke up outside the school ruins. It was morning. Leah was beside her, bruised but alive. No mirrors cracked. No voices. No whispering. Something had changed. That afternoon across Eden's Hollow, the reports stopped. No more sightings. No more screams. No more reflections gone wrong. It was like the entire town had exhaled. The mirror in Jamie's pocket, just a piece of glass now. No blood. No voice. Just silence. But they weren't ready to celebrate. Because one thing remained. The third grave. Jamie returned to the cemetery alone that night, the sky bruised with storm clouds. She found the hidden stone behind Eloise's headstone. It had changed. The date was now blank. Just, remember me. And etched beneath it, fresh, clean lines. She still sees who forgets. Eden's Hollow went quiet, unnervingly quiet. The news stations moved on. The sheriff's office closed the Harper case. The school ruins were slated for demolition again. The missing children were memorialized in a town ceremony where no one mentioned the mirrors or the girl with gray eyes or how many times they'd buried the same name. But Jamie Ray Hollis didn't stop watching. She kept every screen covered, every window shut tight after dark. And each night at 3:14 a.m. she checked her phone's black screen, not for texts, but for eyes. Because she felt it. The stillness wasn't peace. It was waiting. Leah Winters tried to leave town. She made it 2 counties before she pulled into a rest stop bathroom and saw a message scrawled in soap across the mirror. Who forgets I follow? She turned back the same night. They met at Jamie's place. Both exhausted. Both haunted. I don't think we ended it, Leah admitted. I think we just pushed her back into the glass. Jamie nodded slowly. Then we need to stop pretending we can forget her. Or any of them. That night, they broadcast a final podcast episode, no music, no theatrics, just the truth. They told the entire story. The rituals, the mirror, the hidden children, the reflection that remembered pain even when no one else would. And then they said her name. Eloise Harper, 1957, 1971, 1999, and every year after. We remember you, Jamie said. Even if they don't. Within 12 hours, the episode went viral. But the comments weren't what they expected. People from towns across the country began sharing similar stories, kids who went missing and were buried under lies. Rituals covered up. Churches with sealed basements. Mirrors that cracked for no reason. Dozens of listeners reported seeing a girl in their reflections the moment they pressed play. One comment read, "She's at my window. She's smiling." Another, "She thanked me for remembering. Then she walked away." And one more, "She said my daughter wasn't gone, just forgotten." Jamie and Leah drove back to the woods near the old Harper cabin, where it had all started, where the first girl, the failed vessel, the unspoken, had been hidden. They brought candles, a recorder, and the broken mirror now wrapped in cloth. They stood in the clearing and played the final tape, the one Leah had recorded without remembering. A child's voice again, barely more than breath. "I didn't want to be born of pain. I just wanted someone to see me." Jamie lit the candles in a circle. Leah stepped into the center. They waited. Minutes passed. Then the forest shifted, not the trees, but the light between them. And she came. Not the terrifying, cracked smile Eloise. Not the bleeding-eyed reflection. But a girl. No older than 10. Pale. Gray eyes. Silent. She stepped into the candlelight. And for the first time, she wept. Jamie whispered, "We see you." Leah added, "We remember." The girl nodded. Just once. Then walked to the mirror on the ground. And knelt. They watched her reflection fade, piece by piece, until only the trees were visible again, until the crying stopped, until the air became just air again. And then she was gone. The wind returned. The candles blew out. And silence, this time, felt like peace. 3 days later, demolition of Fairhaven Elementary resumed. The ruins were cleared, the trapdoors sealed, the mirrors crushed and carted away. No more sightings were reported in Eden's Hollow. No more screams at 3:14. No more forgotten children clawing to be seen. But Jamie still keeps one mirror uncovered in her bedroom. A small one. Cracked. Every night before sleep, she looks into it and says the same words. "I haven't forgotten." And on some nights, just for a second, a girl smiles back. Not from pain, but from memory. 3 months passed. The town of Eden's Hollow healed on the surface. Fairhaven Elementary was torn down. In its place, a small park. No plaque, no memorial, just grass and silence. Parents walked their children along its winding paths, never knowing the ground once trembled with hidden screams. Jamie Ray Hollis and Leah Winters stayed in town. They no longer feared 3:14 a.m. But they never slept through it either. Leah turned her final podcast into a full-length documentary. It played in only a handful of indie theaters, but the impact was wide. Emails poured in. People from across the country, even abroad, reached out. They remembered their Eloises. The brother who vanished behind a church. The sister whose name was erased from family Bibles. The child found in the woods who never made the papers. The face that still showed up in dreams. One mother wrote, "I thought I was the only one who saw her in the glass. I think maybe she was looking for someone who'd finally say her name." Jamie continued to work cold cases, but not for the department. She started something new. The Reflection Project, a digital archive of missing children never given a full story. Every name remembered, every face restored. At the top of the site, "We see you now." But the silence didn't last, because pain never really goes away, and neither do the things we bury in its name. It started with a girl in Montana, then a boy in Ireland, each found standing in front of a mirror whispering the same name. Eloise, but not in fear, in recognition. Leah received a package in the mail one morning. No return address. Inside, a flash drive, a single page, and a small, round mirror cracked once down the center. The flash drive held video from a police station in Louisiana. Surveillance footage. A girl in a holding cell, age unknown, refused to speak until 3:14 a.m. Then she looked directly at the camera and whispered, "I'm not her. I'm just what she left behind." Then she smiled, and the feed cut to black. The note inside the package was handwritten. She gave them their voices back, but something else stepped through. Jamie and Leah sat together in silence, the cracked mirror between them. "She's not gone," Leah said. Jamie nodded. "She was never just one girl." "No," Leah whispered. "She was everyone they tried to silence." The final shot of Leah's documentary, now streaming to millions, shows Jamie sitting in front of the original handheld mirror. She says nothing, just stares, then slowly whispers, "We buried her twice. We won't do it again." And in the reflection behind her, the faintest shimmer of gray eyes watching. They say there's a mirror in the back of a thrift shop in Eden's Hollow. Old, cracked. If you look into it at exactly 3:14 a.m., you won't see yourself. You'll see someone else. A girl in a white dress. She doesn't speak, but if you whisper her name, Eloise, she'll nod once, then disappear. And the next time you walk by any mirror, you'll feel her watching, just to make sure you still remember.